Hello everyone. We're going to talk about the standardization of sodium hydroxide lab today. And I wanted to talk about a few things. You'll be doing a pre-lab assignment. Because it's our first in-person lab, you'll be doing a lab check-in and safety acknowledgements. And then we'll go ahead and talk about the lab activity itself. Before we get into the PowerPoint, I want to actually look at Canvas and discuss a few things here that you will need to be able to find in order to get ready for this. Your Canvas might look a little bit different by the time you're ready to do this, but at the top you'll have syllabus and schedule information. Below that, you will have the lab activities. So today we'll be talking about the sodium hydroxide lab. So there's two things we'll be looking at. Every time we have an in-person lab, there will be two things. One of them is the pre-lab and the other is the lab itself. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the pre-lab. So this is a little quiz that you'll be doing before each lab. And so I'll go ahead and show you what this looks like. So you'll be uploading a copy of your pre-lab assignments. We'll talk about what those are in a little bit. And then you'll answer a couple of questions related to some important aspects of the lab itself to make sure that you understand before coming to the lab. So this is something you'll need to do before arriving. And then the other thing I wanted to talk about was where you're going to find the actual lab, and that's right here. Standardization of sodium hydroxide. When we click on that, what you'll see is there is a file here for you to download. You'll download that file, you'll put that into your lab notebook, and then when you're done, you can upload that file here. And I think I need to edit this before you can do that, but there will be a button at the top that says submit here, so you'll be submitting that. You'll notice the due date is October 26th. That's not when you're doing the lab. That's when I want it to be uploaded by. So we'll talk later about there's a date in which you'll be uploading all of these things you're doing, and that's the lab activity for that day. So let's go back to the PowerPoint and go through some of the details. And it's this one. I often have way too many things open at a time. So we talked about where you can find some of this. Let's go ahead and talk about what you'll do with these things once you find them. So for your pre-lab assignment, the main thing you'll be doing before each in-person lab is writing down the procedures into your lab notebook. So you'll do that each time we have an in-person lab. Before you come, you'll get those materials from Canvas and then write them into your lab notebook. And then you'll complete the pre-lab quiz. Part of the pre-lab quiz is uploading that pre-lab assignment. So you're uploading the things that you've written on your procedure so that I can see before you arrive that you have your lab notebook ready to go. So you can just take a picture and upload it, and that's fine. You need to acknowledge that you're healthy before coming to the in-person lab. And then there's, again, a few additional questions that we just saw what those look like. One other thing I want to emphasize here, make sure you have your mask and your goggles before leaving to attend the lab at the Madera campus. Make sure you allow plenty of time to arrive to lab on time. Lab starts at 2 o'clock. And you want to use as much of that 3-hour block of time as you can. So you want to get there, kind of right on time if possible. When you get to lab, the first thing we'll be doing is assigning you to a lab drawer because it will be our first in-person meeting. And we're kind of putting a few things together on this first day just for the sake of efficiency and minimizing the number of times we have to meet in person. So your lab drawer could be in either AV140 or AV141. You will be using the same drawer throughout the entire semester, and it will be your individual drawer. We will discuss some specific safety issues particular to the room you're in when you arrive. So perhaps before, perhaps after you've checked into your lab drawer, depending on if you get there right at the start or if you're a few minutes late. Most of the safety you'll be doing online. You'll be watching some videos online and acknowledging that online. I did want to in person discuss specific things related to where things are in the room itself. That's something that we can really only do in person. However, I also want to minimize the amount of large group talking that goes on in person for safety reasons. So we'll talk about that one specific thing in person. The rest of that you'll be doing on your own time before coming, and then there'll be a time to read through some of it while we're there as well. Once you're in you have your lab drawer and we've gone through the lab safety, you may begin working on the assignment. Okay, so I want to say a little bit about what you'll be doing. A lot of this, of course, you should have in your procedure, so you'll know what's going on. But if you have not done an in-person lab in Chemistry 1A, I know some of you may have taken online labs. I want to make sure you're familiar with some of these pieces of equipment. Some of you that did have an in-person 1A experience, maybe you've actually done this lab already. So it won't be necessarily a big new thing for you. So a couple of things in terms of the materials you're working with. You'll have, there's a picture over here, and this is from your lab. Feel free to either take a picture of this and put it in your lab notebook or draw a picture if that's helpful for you in terms of remembering what things are. This larger thing with the large base and the long metal pole is the stand, sometimes called a ring stand. We're not using a ring in this case. These are not in your specific lab drawer, so this is something that you would be sharing with perhaps students from other lab sections. And then there is what's called a burette clamp that we put onto that ring stand. There are other clamps that are in your drawer and are in the cabinet. You want to make sure you're picking the right one, and that's the burette clamp. And it has a clamp on either side. That's a double clamp. When you put the burette into the burette clamp, you want to make sure that it is clamping onto that glass tube, and that it is doing so so that it's standing straight up and down, basically. There's a couple of ways to do this incorrectly, so just make sure yours looks kind of like this. If I see you're a little bit off, I'll come in and give you a hand with that. Couple of other things here. The flask is at the bottom. With the burette, you want to make sure that the stopcock, so the stopcock is down here. This is what we use to add chemicals from the burette into something else. We want to make sure that that is closed when we are not wanting it open. So particularly when you're adding a chemical to the burette, make sure it's closed or else there'll be a big mess you'll have to clean up. Also, when you're adding chemicals to the burette, it's okay to use a funnel to help with that, but you want to be careful of not putting too much not putting more in the funnel than will fit in the burette itself. So just be aware of that. So as you're getting started with the burette, you don't know what was done with it before you used it, so you want to rinse it out first. First with some water. Use a lot of water. Make sure that it is the stopcock is open and the water's flowing out so that it is functioning. If it is having trouble, let me know. I'll try to clean it out and maybe you can get another one. And then once you've done that, rinse it with about 10 milliliters of the titrant so that the inside is conditioned with sodium hydroxide and it's not diluting down your sample. The indicator always goes in the flask along with the thing that you're testing, so those go in the flask. Sodium hydroxide goes in the burette itself. You should complete at least 3 titrations. You can do more if you would like to, if you have enough time. You could do more than that, but I would like to see you get 3 done during the time we have. We have about 3 hours altogether. Your results could matter a little bit for this lab. You're not going to get an F because of your results, but it could be the difference between an A and a B. So just you want to take care with making these measurements and stopping at exactly the right spot. When you have completed the titration, go ahead and rinse out your burette with DI water. If you don't do that, it will jam it up. That will make it difficult for someone else to use it later. So make sure you're rinsing it out before you go. Also, clean up your area very well, both the lab surfaces, and then if there was anything near a balance, make sure you're cleaning that up as well. You're not going to be putting the sodium hydroxide pellets directly on the balance. You should be using a weigh boat for that. But if anything does somehow get on there, we want to make sure that's part of our cleanup activity. And then I did want to discuss one little change to the procedure. So the procedure I have right here. In step number 12, it says that we want to make sure there's no carbon dioxide in the bottle. I'm not going to be as concerned with that because it is a smaller concern. There are other things that will probably have a bigger effect on the on any little errors that come up. And squeezing it, you have a concentrated, fairly concentrated base in there. It is dangerous, so we don't want to have any issues come up for that reason. So just don't squeeze the bottle. You should be fine without doing that. Okay, so let's go ahead and finish up our discussion here. So the last thing I want to mention is some safety issues. As I mentioned, the sodium hydroxide is very dangerous. It can cause permanent eye damage, so you want to be very, very careful with it. Make sure you're wearing your goggles throughout the lab. And then again, thoroughly clean your area once you're done. So this is the pre-lab discussion for the standardization of sodium hydroxide lab. I look forward to seeing you all in the lab very, very soon.